The Legend of Vox Machina, Critical Role's animated series based off of their first Dungeons & Dragons campaign, has finished airing its third season, and I already cannot wait for Season 4. Hello everyone, I'm Finn. Welcome back to finnfilms. As many of you know, I am a massive Critical Role and Dungeons & Dragons nerd. If you haven't seen it already, I did a whole series reacting to the Legend of Vox Machina, the third season that has recently aired, so make sure you go check that out. One of my favorite things about the Legend of Vox Machina, especially as a Critical Role fan, is all of the really sneaky hidden Easter eggs and references that are carefully laid out throughout each episode of this show, which is exactly what we're discussing today in this video. So join me today as we discuss some of my favorite Easter eggs and references from the Legend of Vox Machina Season 3. Before we get started, guys, I just want to say if you enjoy the video or learn something new, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as that is the easiest way to help support me, and it really does go a long way in putting these videos into the algorithm. As well, if you couldn't tell from the lack of things on my walls, I am currently in the process of moving, so hopefully in the next week or so, uploads should return back to a normal schedule, albeit in a different room. Okay, starting off with episode 1 of season 3 of Legend of Vox Machina, we have two very cheeky, sneaky references to Matt Mercer, Critical Role's Dungeon Master, an amazing voice actor. The first coming in a conversation between Vex and Percy that happens pretty early on in episode 1 of season 3, when Percy says this.
Well, one can certainly try.
You can certainly try is a very well-known kind of catchphrase of Matt Mercer's that he uses during the Dungeons & Dragons campaign. This catchphrase usually coming as a response to a question whenever a player asks him something that they can do. Generally, the thing that they're asking is oftentimes ridiculous or completely out of the box. Matt responding simply with a, well, you can certainly try. This is a really good example of how, like, sneaky some of the Easter eggs and references are in this show, especially in Season 3 when you compare them to Season 1. A lot of the Easter eggs throughout Season 3 are really subtle. A lot of them are very sneakily hidden. This one less so, but a lot of them are voice lines, which are much more harder to detect that they are a reference upon first watch. Like our next Easter egg and reference, which was coming in episode 1 and was said by Percy later on in this episode when they were in Ank'Harel, Percy saying this.
Easier said than done. It's high noon. There are eyes everywhere.
Yes, that is a high noon reference by my boy Percy, which is a reference to the Overwatch hero Cassidy, which is voice acted by, you guessed it, Matt Mercer. His, Cassidy, the character in Overwatch's catchphrase, probably most common memed phrase, is, it's high noon, which the cast memed Matt a lot, especially throughout the early of Season 1. I believe that Matt may have even dressed up as Cassidy once for possibly a Halloween episode early on in Campaign 1. I could be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure that's right. And yeah, this is a really good example of the even more subtlety of Easter eggs and references that are happening throughout this show. Not only are we getting Easter eggs and references to Critical Role things that happened within the Critical Role universe, whether it's campaigns 1, 2, and 3, but now we're also getting references and Easter eggs to other characters that the Critical Role cast has played in their long history of voice acting. The final Easter egg and reference from episode 1 comes towards the end of the episode when the cast is in Ank'Harel, and Scanlan comes across a strange man selling him a strange type of illicit product, a product known as spice.
You spice?
This is a much more on-the-nose reference, especially for fans of Campaign 1, but I had to include this in this video because it's just an amazing, hilarious moment. For those of you who don't know, in Campaign 1, Scanlan comes across a spice dealer, a kind of illicit drug in the world of Exandria. Scanlan going on a bit of a kind of like drug lord, kingpin type mini arc for a little while, becoming obsessed with spice. Do you spice becoming a very common kind of reference and phrase within the Critical Role fan base and within the cast, especially during this time in Campaign 1. This arc was basically cut from the Legend of Vox Machina animated series, but there is a couple of references to it, specifically this one coming in episode 1 of Legend of Vox Machina Season 3 with Matt Mercer reprising his role as the spice dealer in Ank'Harel, and I just loved this moment. I thought it was hilarious. Do You Spice is like a iconic Critical Critical Role Campaign 1 just hilarious moment, just one of those hilarious moments of kind of like improv sessions that come from the table of Critical Role, and I was so happy that they included, you know, little moments like this, these hilarious moments within the Legend of Vox Machina, even if we didn't actually get to see Scanlan go on his full spice arc. Moving on to episode 2, and we have quite a few Easter eggs and references. I think this episode might have the most references and Easter eggs of any of the 12 episodes in season 3. So starting off, we have 4 Easter eggs all in the same place in Ank'Harel when our party are venturing through Ank'Harel and they come across a small little shop, and we get a shot of these 4 items right here. All 4 of these items are Easter eggs and references to different parts of the Critical Role campaigns, whether it's campaigns 1, 2, and 3. The first Easter egg we have is a piece of artisanal work from my boy Chetney Pockapy here on the far left. We see Chetney Pockapy's signature, Chetney Pockapy being a character from campaign 3 played by Travis Willingham, Chetney being a well-renowned artisan working with wood and has made many works that are all scattered throughout Exandria. Chetney becoming a really kind of famous like artisan wood worker. One of his kind of core character traits for my boy Chetney, played by Travis, again, that I absolutely love. And we see that, again, this work here is made by Chetney Pockapy with this tiny little signature of Chetney here down in the corner. Next to that, we have a Taste of Taldorei mug. Taste of Taldorei popping up in Campaign 2 and 3, if I'm remembering correctly. Taste of Taldorei being a themed restaurant that comes up in the Critical Role campaign, I believe in Wildmount. A Taste of Taldorei being a kind of reference itself to the events of Vox Machina in Campaign 1, being a themed restaurant for Vox Machina and all of their heroic deeds that we see played out in Campaign 1. A very kind of funny meta upon meta reference Easter egg here that just is very, very silly and just on brand for Critical Role. Next to that, we have 2 tickets to Dreamscape. Dreamscape being a theater in Drusar, specifically a theater that Bell's Hells venture to early on in Campaign 3, if I'm remembering correctly. Again, another reference to Campaign 3. This one much more subtle, but we do have several throughout Legend of Vox Machina Season 3. And finally, we have the strange skull here on the far end of the table. This skull is a Githyanki Skull and is a reference to a little story kind of beat arc moment that occurs in Campaign 1 when our crew, our heroes, find a cursed Githyanki Skull. The cast debating whether they should use this skull, listen to the entity within this skull, creating for a much kind of very like high drama, hilarious moment in the throes of the Chroma Conclave arc. They completely cut this from the Legend of Vox Machina, but there's a nice little Easter egg in reference to it here in this scene. Our next Easter egg comes later on in this episode when we see Scanlan walking out of a bar with Kaylee holding a massive tankard.
This is a reference to Scanlan's player, Sam Riegel, and his massive tankard that he would drink from throughout the Critical Role campaigns. This one is pretty obvious, but it is very much an iconic prop you would see on the Critical Role table and a very fun little Easter egg.
Following that, we have another very sneaky vocal reference coming later on in this episode in the palace of Jamon Sa'ord, when suddenly Scanlan comes in saving the party with this line. Objection! This is a reference to a Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney from the video game or animated series, take your pick. A very strange, peculiar reference if you didn't know that Sam Riegel actually voiced Phoenix Wright, and I believe the Ace Attorney video game, if I'm not mistaken. Another reference here to another character that one of the cast have played, similar to the reference of Cassidy earlier on, like I said, in episode 1. Again, another example of another kind of sneaky, out-of-the-box reference and Easter egg that are popping up in Legend of Vox Machina Season 3, and one of my favorite Easter eggs throughout the entirety of Season 3 as a whole. The final reference and Easter egg that I want to talk about from episode 2 of Season 3 comes right here at the end, and is a reference to Zerxus Oloris, one of my favorite characters from any Critical Role series, specifically from Critical Role's EXU Calamity miniseries.
The plate is with a demon called Zerxus Oloris.
Mm-hmm.
Antiquities collector. in the city.
Zerxus? Wait, what? Now, this reference absolutely caught me off guard when I was watching it in my reactions, because this is a major change from the story of Campaign 1 by including Zerxus Aloris from EXU Calamity. For a quick kind of lore speedrun, Zerxus was a paladin of Avalier, the champion of Avalier, one of the floating mage cities during the Age of Arcanum. Zerxus ultimately sacrificing himself in a very heroic manner to save his friends, the Ring of Brass, as well as to try to save many people within the Flying City when the Calamity kicked off. Zerxus ultimately making a deal with Asmodeus, the Lord of Lies, the Lord of the Nine Hells, by taking the Mace of the Black Crown, one of the arms of the Betrayer gods, becoming Asmodeus' champion and turning him into a demon or devil. One of the two. This was less of like a hidden Easter egg and more of just kind of a lore reference, a lore change within the animated series, but it was definitely one of my favorite. EXU Calamity is by far my favorite piece of media that Critical Role has ever made, and seeing it pop up in the animated series was just something that I was not expecting. It caught me completely off guard, but man, am I glad they did it. I felt like it really just kind of fleshed out the world even more by including, Calamity lore, and I absolutely fanboyed out whenever I saw these moments pop up on my screen. Moving on to episode 5, we have another Easter egg and reference. This one was easily one of my favorite of all of the Easter egg and references that I clocked during this animated series, and this one comes in the fight with Vorugal, the White Dragon, and the Pit Fiend. Specifically, a move that the Pit Fiend uses on Vorugal. This move right here, which wrestling fans across the world would easily be able to recognize. Yep, the Pit Fiend hit this dragon with a freaking stone cold stunner. Whosever idea it was to include a stone cold stunner into this fight scene, hats off to you. That's freaking hilarious. It caught me off guard. I love the little wrestling reference. Again, another Easter egg and reference that I never thought would be popping up in my Critical Role Dungeons & Dragons animated series, a reference to wrestling and the goat himself, Stone Cold. This caught me off guard. I thought it was freaking hilarious. Yes, love stuff like this. Keep doing stuff like this, Legend of Vox Machina team. Moving on into episode 6 as we enter into Scanlan's Magnificent Mansion, and we have a reference to one of the most infamous, hilarious moments in all of Campaign 1, and that is Keyfish. Specifically in these two scenes in particular, where we see Keyleth jump into a big pool of water, turning into a goldfish, and then getting launched into the camera, splatting against the camera. This moment, I believe, coming sometime in the Chroma Conclave arc, when Marisha, in all of her hilarity, declares that we're like freaking gods now, something along those lines, as she jumps off of a cliff face down into the ocean water below, transforming herself into a goldfish with her druid powers, believing that she wouldn't take any fall damage, that she would just plop right into the water and be completely fine. Of course, that's not what happened, though. Keyleth ended up falling like 100 meters into the water down below, impacting, taking I think 10d10 damage or some absolutely ridiculous amount of damage, her goldfish form immediately popping because it's got 1 HP, and then Keyleth dying on impact. Luckily, they ended up reviving her, but this went down as one of the most infamous, hilarious moments, this Keyfish moment, in all of Critical Role Campaign 1, dare I say in all of Critical Role in general. This is just one of those moments that's it's just like classic D&D. The combination of her saying, we're like gods, and then jumping to her death in a moment where she does not think that she is going to die, only to get immediately served, the consequences of her actions is just like, this is just like classic D&D moments, classic roleplay, spontaneous moments that people love about Dungeons & Dragons, that really kind of embodies the hilarity of Critical Role. The fact that Critical Role is an improv live show where, at one moment you could be crying from all of the amazing acting and the drama that's going on, and the next you could be rolling on the floor laughing because of absolutely hilarious and ridiculous moments like this. Moving on into episode 8, where we see a flashback scene of Vox Machina finding a tied up, bound Percy in a dungeon in a city randomly. This is iconic kind of classic classic moment in like Critical Role, like Campaign 1 lore history, because it is a moment that happened pre-streamed game. This is a moment that happened when the game was still a home game, like I think a year or two before the game ever was streamed on Twitch with Geek and Sundry. A lot of people probably don't even know that Percy was an original member of Vox Machina, that he joined kind of late as a character, as I believe Taliesin played a paladin or some other kind of character before ultimately switching to Percy. Percy joining the party here in this city as a prisoner, the party ultimately finding him, locked up in this prison and then setting him free, which is basically exactly what happened in the campaign, but was something that we as an audience never got to witness. We only heard about, through stories of the cast members, but here in the animated series, we're actually getting to see that played out, basically for the first time, which I think is really awesome. I love the fact that they include moments, from pre-streamed campaign when it was just a home game among friends, just a game that was done for Liam's birthday, that we as the audience finally get to see played out in the animated screen, because we never got to see it played out live, because again, it happened pre-stream before the Dungeons & Dragons campaign. Also, Percy's my favorite character, so getting to see more Percy backstory stuff is just awesome. The final Easter egg I want to talk about comes in episode 10, and that is when our party kind of split up, Vex and Vax venturing off looking for Ripley, heading to a small shady town called Stilben. This again is another reference to the pre-D&D streamed game of Critical Role, Stilben actually being the town where Vox Machina as a group was formed. Again, this is one of those kind of iconic moments from like Critical Role lore that we didn't actually get to see played out, again, because this happened, before the campaign was ever streamed. Again, this is the origins of Vox Machina happened here in Stilben, when all of them come together on different quests, ultimately all interacting with one another in a kind of session 1, session 0 type fashion, and start working together and ultimately join and become the foundations of what later become Vox Machina, the adventuring party, and, Vox Machina, the Critical Role campaign, which ultimately spawned into what we know today as the massive Twitch stream, the massive media company. As well, it's also kind of a reference to, like, the show and the group's humble origins. The fact that, all of this started, this crazy Critical Role, media company started from a little home game that was done for, Liam O'Brien's birthday, that Matt Mercer and, everyone kind of put together. It was just a group of friends meeting at home that ultimately started in becoming a reoccurring Dungeons and Dragons game for a group of nerdy-ass voice actors that started, eventually, streaming it in a really scuffed Twitch stream on Geek and Sundry that has now blossomed into what is easily the biggest, like, Dungeons and Dragons brand and now, like, media company that exists right now. It has become something that I don't think anyone ever could have thought it would become. I just think that's amazing, and I love this, like, really kind of, like, fun reference here in episode 10 of Legend of Vox Machina, not only to this humble origins of Critical Role as a media company, but to Vox Machina as an adventuring party, and, what would ultimately become, an animated series with a high budget, debuting on Amazon Prime. And yes, these were just a few of some of my favorite Easter eggs and references from Legend of Vox Machina Season 3. There are so many other Easter eggs and references that we could have talked about in this episode, but I've already been ranting for like 20 plus minutes about these Easter eggs. So if you want to let me know your favorite Easter eggs and references for Legend of Vox Machina Season 3, then let me know in the comments section down below. As always, if you enjoyed this video or learned something new, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as that is the easiest way to help support me, and it really does go a long way in putting these videos into the algorithm. If you did enjoy this video, then why don't you check out some of my other videos on screen now, like my Legend of Vox Machina reaction series and my other, media content and media videos. As always, thank you again, guys, for continuing to support me. I'll see you in the next one. Until next time, peace, love, Adu.